I'm Laura Wilson, and I'm sharing my birth story today. I had a natural home birth and want to just help inspire other people who are curious about that process. It originally seemed, so I have a 3-month-old, and I would have shared earlier, but, I just wasn't feeling like rushing to it. And then I kind of felt like there was an ego element attached to sharing our birth story, but then I realized, because we had a home birth, not a lot of people know about that and what that process is like and how safe it can actually be. So I am sharing my story just to help inspire and educate and just bring light to this type of birth. There are only about, I want to say 1%. I know it's definitely less than 5. Somewhere between 1 and 3% of births are at home, and in the U.S. Specifically. So, just like sharing my story, one thing that helped me was reading, hearing, watching other stories, whether or not that was for a home birth or not, but just surrounding yourself with more information, positive and even negative, just so you are going into things fully informed of what to expect, is really important, and that helped me. And I think whatever decision you go through while you're on this process of pregnancy or planning to get pregnant is just getting informed. And another way to do that, reading certain books. Ina May's Guide to Natural Childbirth book is a good one. And there's a couple other resources out there. I didn't go too heavy in the books, but that is one of them. And I can't recommend the Business of Being Born documentary enough. So watch that. That was recommended to me by my midwife, and I watched that with my husband, and we didn't even get halfway through it before knowing for sure that the home birth route was the route for us. So open your mind and watch that documentary. It's on Amazon Prime. I think you have to rent it, but it's just a few bucks, and it's not like we've been going to the movies a lot lately, so go rent yourself that documentary if you want to learn more. So midwife, I'll start there. When I moved to the area I'm in, I realized there wasn't a birth center in the area. So that's really what got my mind going about, well, what if I did a home birth? I knew I didn't really want the traditional hospital birth. So in my area, my options were that there wasn't the birth center, but there was a hospital that had midwives. So while that is a great option, I, for me, didn't like that the midwives kind of go on a schedule. There's about 4 or 5 of them. You never know who you're going to actually get the day you're delivering. And I'm sure they're all capable, but for me, I would want somebody who the care plan is, one person from start to finish. That makes me feel the most comfortable. I love the home midwife care plan as well, for the sake of just feeling so supported. Our appointments are 1 hour long. I could text and call her anytime I wanted to. She had an assistant that I could text and call. So I never felt rushed. It just felt like a very safe space, really centered on my well-being and my future baby's well-being. And I've heard a lot of people say the opposite in doctor's offices. They're rushed, they only have 15 minutes. And that's actually something that the Business of Being Born addresses for actual delivery. Is many doctors, and this is a general statement, but there is research that backs this in the documentary, but many doctors will, if you're there in labor and you're taking too much of their time and they want to get home for dinner, they might encourage you to start taking Pitocin and have a medicated delivery, just so they can get out of the office by the end of the day and get home for dinner, kind of thing. They don't, and I say they, but like there's a lot of doctors out there that are male doctors. It's interesting to see how the industry has evolved over the last 100 years, how home birthing used to be the thing, and then as medicine evolved, which is great. I'm grateful for medicine. I'm grateful for C-sections because my husband was a C-section baby. So there is a spot for medicine and those emergency procedures, totally. But the odds are if you go into the hospital to give birth, most likely you will not have a natural birth. That's just where we're at in this day and age. I think C-section rate in the US is 30-something% at least. And it's just interesting that for such a wealthy, advanced country, more injuries and C-sections are common in delivery and birth than other countries. So you'll have a lot of other complications that arise because you went into the hospital, because they started medicating you to push things along, to speed it along, instead of letting your body just naturally do what it knows to do. Your body knows how to give birth. So there's that. But enough about that. So our birth story started around 39 and a half weeks. I started feeling extra tired. You're already tired at that point, but I started feeling extra tired, extra swollen. I had a few nights where I slept more than I had been sleeping. For me, my baby was long, and so even when he dropped a few weeks prior to that, I never felt that relief of indigestion and the rib kicks. It was just constant. So you know, sometimes there's no relief there until it's over. And so he had dropped around 36 weeks, and then around 39 and a half weeks, that's when I just knew I had a feeling I wasn't going to go much longer. I was just, you can just tell, at least I thought you know, is my only pregnancy, so I don't have anything to compare it to, but I just knew it was coming. And then, so it was over a weekend, Friday, Saturday, I started feeling Braxton Hicks a little more regularly, but there was still no pattern. It just felt like cramps, period cramps. So no actual contractions of my uterus or abdomen. It just felt like low cramps. So I was like, okay, well, you know, I didn't really get a lot of Braxton Hicks throughout, you know, the end of the third trimester. So I was like, well, all right, this is happening. I know this is a sign, but it also doesn't mean labor is imminent. So I'm just gonna keep doing what I'm doing. I was walking every day, stretching, staying hydrated, you know, and just starting to really slow down. And so Sunday night, right before dinner, my husband and I decided to do just a short little walk around the neighborhood. And it's funny, I was saying, you know, walking, they say, is one of the things that helps women go into labor. And he was like, oh, interesting. I'm like, yeah, so I want to just keep this up even though it's getting harder. We get home, I bring out my yoga mat. My mother-in-law was over, my father-in-law was out getting our dinner, so I had some time to kill. And so I get out my yoga mat and start doing some stretches, and I go into a lunge, and then my water broke. So I was like, oh, okay. Either I just peed myself, which I know I didn't, or my water broke. So I went and I had my midwife gave me this litmus paper. So if you think your water breaks, you test the water on the little litmus paper, and if it turns dark blue, your water broke. It's the amniotic fluid, and it did. So yeah, so that's exciting. I think I was actually slowly leaking for a couple of days because I called my midwife a day earlier and did the litmus paper, and it didn't turn dark blue. So she kind of had a heads up that, you know, things were close also. So I called her right away, and she said, okay, make sure you feed yourself. Oh, this was around 7 p.m. So she was like, make sure you just feed yourself and go to bed. I don't know who in their right mind can have their water break and then just go to bed, because your mind just starts going like, okay, holy crap, all this stuff is about to happen. Like, I know I've been preparing, but this is about to happen. So I tried to eat dinner and relax and go to bed. And so I just kind of laid in bed and watched a show for like an hour. And then I finally fell asleep, maybe around 9:30, 10. And then I woke up at 10:30. So much for getting sleep. And my contractions officially started. No more mild period cramps. They were uncomfortable. It was so uncomfortable to just lay down. My feet wanted to press into something to kind of counter. So I called her, and I was like, oh, I'm thinking, contractions are starting. I was trying to time them, but it wasn't very clear to me. So based on what I described to her, she was like, go back to bed. You've got plenty of time. Call me when what you just said is harder to say. And I was like, okay, all right. So I try to get sleep. I don't. 2 hours later, it's 12:30, and I'm like, this is just, it's intensifying. And I started to actually feel the urge to like go to the bathroom, sort of like pressure. And I told her that, and she was like, okay, get in the tub, we're on our way. So when she said get in the tub, she meant the bathtub, not the birth tub. So when you go into water early in your labor, it can delay it. And so that was actually what we were trying to do. So because things just sped up quickly. So I get my husband, like I'm on the floor, and then it's like, okay, it's time to get in the tub. And so that just meant to get everything started. So she is an hour away, and so is her assistant. So, which I wasn't worried about, because you hear labors, especially first labors, going hours, days. So it wasn't a concern to me that she was an hour away. So I go and I get into the bathroom tub just to try to relax and kind of calm my body. Meanwhile, my husband, he blows up the birth pool and just starts getting the hose ready, gets it connected to the other bathroom. Our birth pool was set up in our living room, and so there was another bathroom that it could connect to for easy access. So he was doing that. I probably spent a half an hour in the birth pool, the bathtub. And then at one point I was like, okay, I just don't want to be in this position anymore. So I get out, and he comes and gets me, and I just kind of put comfy loungewear on and decide to like walk around and move around the house. I had affirmations printed on paper that I was going to put up on the wall where we were going to deliver. I didn't even think to do that, so I didn't do that. They would just stayed in the bathroom, so I never saw those again. But they're a great idea for positive birthing if you want to put affirmations up on the wall. I just didn't get to that. So I go out to the living room and kind of walk around, but really walking didn't feel good either. So I'm kneeling on the couch and then hovering to the back of the couch. So I'm just kind of like leaning like that. Midwife shows up an hour after I call her. So she comes in and she immediately checks my vitals, my heart rate, listens to the baby's heart. Everything's good. She starts getting set up, and she's just asking me general like care questions, how I'm feeling and things like that. A few minutes later, Josie shows up. She's the assistant, and she starts preparing the kit. So all the medical supplies and things like that Olivia will need. And then together, her and start filling up the tub with water. It takes some time, and you don't really need to fill it up with water before they get there, because you want the water to stay warm. We had pots on the stove, which later we did add to kind of keep it warmer. So they filled it up while I was laboring, and then put a blanket on top to try to keep that warm. Meanwhile, I'm laboring, and it just feels, it's hard to explain, but it just felt like, okay, the worst period cramps ever, and then your stomach tightening, and it was coming in waves of 3. So I would feel it kind of like 3 ripples, and then I'd have a pause. I can't tell you the timing because I have no idea. And then, so I was trying to stay hydrated in between the contractions. So this is probably around 2:30. And then around this time, Olivia just seems like, based on first-time moms, she could probably get some rest while I'm in this long phase of labor, because first-time moms labor usually pretty long, 12 hours to 24 hours. And I remember asking, like, how long could this last? And she was like, it could be a couple hours or a whole nother day. Bless you for whoever labored for a whole day. Major props and kudos to you, or for those who labored longer. So Olivia goes and lays down in our guest room and takes a nap, and that's great. She needs to do what she needs to do. It's the middle of the night, you know. These women who do home births are just always going, so sleep when you can sleep. That was fine. So we're hanging out. Josie is helping measure the heart rate, and to be honest, every time she measured the heart rate, I think she was doing it every 30 minutes, it forced a contraction. It was so uncomfortable. And then her and my husband together would press on my hips, but I wasn't having back labor. So if you press on the back and the hips, there's things you can do to kind of move the hips around to help. It helped a little bit, but I wasn't having back labor, so it probably would have felt better had I been having back labor. It kind of reminded me I felt nauseous, so it kind of reminded me of like food poisoning. Like you've got the shakes and you want to throw up, but you're not throwing up. That's how I felt with every contraction. It was really weird. Yeah, I did go to the bathroom at some point, which was nice to kind of get that out of the way, because then I didn't have that issue during pushing, which is common. But I didn't throw up. But nausea, having to go to the bathroom are signs that labor is like really soon. I was also spotting. So one thing that is really nice about a home birth is that they don't do the routine cervical exams, which can, especially if your water breaks, can lead to infection. So I didn't have any cervical exams to see how dilated I was. We all just fully entrusted in my body to know when and what was happening. So, then the blood, you know, coming out a little bit was a sign that I was dilating, so we didn't need to check. So then it got to a point where they were quick. I don't know how quick they were, but they were quick, and it was just pretty unbearable. And Josie was like, we could wake up Olivia. This is probably 4:30 in the morning. And she was like, we could wake up Olivia now, and she could check. But if she checks, it doesn't necessarily mean, you know, we don't want to go into the birth pool too early, because it can, you know, it can delay things. So we tried 2 more rounds of the contractions, and then after 2 more, I was just like, okay, it's time to get Olivia. I'm ready. And so Olivia came out and she checked me, and lo and behold, I was 7 centimeters dilated. So she was like, all right, let's get into the tub. So we added a little bit of hot water. They helped me get into the tub, and oh my gosh, it felt so good. It was such a relief. You know, my plan was to deliver in the tub, and this, you know, what I'm about to say just shows that like things don't go as planned. And so I knew that going into like whatever plan I wanted to have, that anything could happen, right? So I knew that, you know, for me, I have such a controlling personality, but I was really trying to kind of let go. So as best as I could. So I get into the tub and I'm kind of lying on my side, but then I end up hovering so that I don't have to use any of my own strength. And then, so I'm like this on the edge, and then my husband is on the other side holding me up. So I'm just kind of like laying, and he's holding me, and then the waves of force come. And yeah, I really thought I was going to deliver on my hands and knees, but to be honest, I never even got into that position. But hands and knees seems to be like a common one for natural birth. So what my midwife has me do, she has me kind of do like a Pilates clamshell. So I'm on my side, knees open, and she's like, all right, let's start pushing. Just based on how I was breathing. When I first got into the water, I think because of that transition, they gave me oxygen for just a hot second. So that is something that all midwives at home are equipped with. They're equipped with oxygen and things like that to help support you. And I think they even have Pitocin. So and also my midwife was a certified nurse midwife, so that also made me feel really good about the care I was in. Even though I do trust other home birth midwives, we went with a certified nurse midwife, and there was only one in our area. So just, do your research. A certified nurse midwife is what you would get in the hospital. Okay, so I'm pushing and pushing, and it's so much harder than, like, the whole bearing down, like, I just couldn't get it. And I was very vocal. And so you want to try to be low with your voice. And they kept trying to get me to, like, breathe and, like, exhale low and deep. So I was trying to do that. And it was really cool. Like, my husband was doing it with me. We were all just trying to, like, do this primal, deep breathing and moaning. And it got to the point where I wasn't getting anywhere. And so my midwife was, instead of having me struggle and just keep doing this, she was like, look, honey, we need gravity to help you here. We could either prolong this, keep you in the tub, or speed this up. And I tried a few more times. I was like, okay, let me just try a few more times, because I really wanted to do it in the tub. And then she basically decided for me. She's like, we got to get you out. So I was only in the tub for, 45 minutes at the most. And so getting out of the tub was so uncomfortable. It took all three of them to get me out. I mean, you're having contractions, your body is just convulsing, and you're trying to climb out of this tub. And so they get me out, and I'm basically like this on my husband, who's 6 foot tall, and I'm 5'7", so I'm like hanging on to him, and poor thing, it takes all of my might. My feet come off the floor. He's 100% holding me up as I'm contracting and trying to bear down. And like I said, the bearing down was just really hard for me to figure out. And so I'm trying and making progress finally. So it was the right decision to stand up and let gravity do its thing. But it wasn't enough. So to get my hips to open even more, they take one foot, which was so hard to do while you're having contractions. I basically prop one foot up onto the birth pool. So I'm standing, one leg normal, one leg on the birth pool, holding on to my husband. And as soon as we had my foot propped up, it took one round of contractions, and out he came. It's so hard to describe. For me, it was just such a relief. You just feel that pressure come out, the water and the baby. And then there was a pause before we heard him cry, and then we heard him cry. And so then we immediately got on the floor, and my husband got behind me, was just kind of holding me on the floor, and we had our baby in our arms. Yeah, it's so crazy. Oh my gosh, I'm gonna cry. I can't believe it. And then there he was, and we held him, and we did delayed cord clamping, so he, got as much nutrition from the placenta as possible. My husband was in shock. Like, I think we both were. Like, I thought I would have had more to say. Like, oh, my baby, you're here. I love you. And all these things. Like, I don't even think I shed a tear. I was just like, oh, it's done. Yeah. And so, So, what we found out, not until the next day, is that the cord was wrapped around his neck. And I just wanted to say that is something that comes up. People worry if they have a birth at home, like all the what ifs. If the baby is breech, if the cord's wrapped around the neck. So if the baby was breech and we didn't know it, if the baby was breech and we did know it, it is illegal to have a home birth. But we knew he wasn't breech. But if he was and we didn't know it, my midwife has delivered breech babies, and at that you know, she would have been able to handle it. But with the cord, she handled that amazingly well. She never let on, so we never worried, and she just acted quickly. That quick action though, because of the cord, did make me tear, which I felt 100% and was very painful. But, you know, it brought him into this world safely, and so I don't, you know, it sucks, but the cord was wrapped around his neck, so what are you gonna do, you know? So that's fine, whatever. So yeah, so then he was born at 5:30 in the morning, so contraction started around 10:30 p.m. He was born at 5:30 a.m., so that's about 7 hours of labor. If you count when the water broke, that's 10 hours of labor. But so I'm not really sure. My midwife says to start when the labor, the contractions really started. So 7 hours of labor, 30 minutes of actual pushing. Yeah, so he came out fast. And then they moved me over to the couch, which was lined with, you know, protective things, stitched me up. I got to try to nurse him. And we were just like in awe and in shock still. Co made me a sandwich immediately. Midwife was like, get mama some food. And he was like, okay. So in his state, he made me a almond butter and jelly sandwich that was just like heaven. And yeah, I ate, and then, you know, did skin to skin. And then once, you know, I was fixed up and we had like our moment, I went to the bathroom. Josie, the assistant, got to help me clean up, and Co got to do skin to skin, which was so nice, and just like a special part of doing a natural birth at home. And I know you can, if you do a hospital birth, definitely just ask for skin to skin for both parents. It's just like the golden time. It's a really nice thing. And then we went to bed, and it took about 3 hours after delivering him for the midwives to clean up and take care of us. And then they were gone. So by 8:30 in the morning, we were just at home in our beds, and as a family, and it was just so nice. And then they came back later that day. I think they had another birth, so they came back later that day and checked up on us, checked our vitals, and yeah, I just felt so supported. We had at least 3 other home visits for those first 2 weeks or so, 2 to 3 weeks. And so they came back a couple times, and then I went to see them maybe by 3 weeks or something like that. No, I didn't go see them until 6 weeks. But for the first 3 weeks, they came to see us. So that was really, really nice. And yeah, I would not do it any other way. The fact that I could labor around the house in, you know, the comfort of my home. I had a playlist going. I had candles. You know, I had it as soothing as possible. I couldn't imagine being stuck in a bed tied to machines. It just was not for me. It takes a lot of trust. Like, I knew my body was meant for this. And so, you know, you get to a point in your pregnancy where if you do have high blood pressure, things like that, or even while you're in labor, and if you're doing a home birth and you have high blood pressure, she will send you to the hospital. So, you know, it's not like you're ever in a moment where like, oh crap, we're doomed. You know, for the most part, there are signs leading up to delivery that say it's safe to do it at home. Based on the baby's vitals, the baby's heart rate, and mine. And so all of that was checked out good. They were so thorough. And so I can't recommend it enough. If you have any questions, I can go into anything in more detail. You know, like the pain is real. It's something that, you know, like the word intense isn't enough to describe it. I thought it would have been more of like blissful based on some of the things I saw online, but it was blissful afterwards, and that's something, you know, I wouldn't trade. Maybe baby number 2 will be more blissful since I'll know what to expect. I'll know how to bear down and like what the contractions will really feel like. I definitely lost my voice for a couple of days because of how loud I was. So good thing it was not the middle of the day, because my neighbors for sure would have heard me. But yeah, so that's it. Natural home birth. Everyone was safe and good and healthy. Baby was 8.5 pounds. Yeah. So if you have any questions, message me. I'm happy to go into anything in more detail. I hope this kind of helped you learn a little bit more about a natural home birth and how safe and positive it really can be, and really supporting. So yeah, that's it. That's our story. Thanks for watching.